In this video, we will introduce the prep for AZ-104, Microsoft Azure Administrator exam. What is Microsoft Azure Administrator? Who should take the Arizona 104 exam? AZ-104 exam details. Skills measured in Arizona 104. How to prepare for the Arizona 104 exam. Benefits of earning the Arizona 104 certification. 1. You need to recommend a solution to automate the configuration for the finance department users. The solution must meet the technical requirements. What should you include in the recommended? A. Azure APB2C. B. Azure AD Identity Protection. C. An Azure Logic App and the Microsoft Identity Management MIM client. D. Dynamic groups and conditional access policies. 2. You need to prepare the environment to meet the authentication requirements. Which 2 actions should you perform? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Note: each correct selection is worth 1 point. A. Azure Active Directory, add identity protection and an Azure policy. B. A recovery services vault and a backup policy. C. An Azure Key Vault and an access policy. D. An Azure Storage Account and an access policy. 3. You need to recommend an identify solution that meets the technical requirements. What should you recommend? A. Federated Single-On SSO and Active Directory Federation Services, ADFS. B. Password hash synchronization and single sign-on SSO. C. Cloud-only user accounts. D. Pass-through authentication and single sign-on SSO. 4. You have an Azure subscription that contains a user named User1. You need to ensure that User1 can deploy virtual machines and manage virtual networks. The solution must use the principle of least privilege. Which role-based access control (RBAC) role should you assign to User1? A. Owner. B. Virtual Machine Administrator Login. C. Contributor. D. Virtual Machine Contributor. 5. You have an Azure App Services web app named App1. You plan to deploy App1 by using Web Deploy. You need to ensure that the developers of App1 can use their Azure Active Directory, Azure AD, credentials to deploy content to App1. The solution must use the principle of least privilege. What should you do? A. Configure app-level credentials for FTPS. B. Assign the website contributor role to the developers. C. Assign the owner role to the developers. D. Configure user-level credentials for FTPS. 6. You download an Azure Resource Manager template based on an existing virtual machine. The template will be used to deploy 100 virtual machines. You need to modify the template to reference an administrative password. You must prevent the password from being stored in plain text. What should you create to store the password? A. Azure Active Directory. Add identity protection and an Azure policy. B. A recovery services vault and a backup policy. C. An Azure Key Vault and an access policy. D. An Azure storage account and an access policy. 7. You sign up for Azure Active Directory, Azure AD, Premium. You need to add a user named admin1 at contoso.com as an administrator on all the computers that will be joined to the Azure AD domain. What should you configure in Azure AD? A. Device settings from the Devices blade. B. General settings from the Groups blade. C. User settings from the Users blade. D. Providers from the MFA server blade. 8. You have an Azure subscription. You plan to migrate 50 virtual machines from VMware vSphere to the subscription. You create a recovery services vault. What should you do next? A. Configure an extended network. B. Create a recovery plan. C. Deploy an open virtualization application, OVA, template to vSphere. D. Configure a virtual network. 9. You have an Azure subscription that contains a storage account named Storage1. You need to allow access to Storage1 from selected networks and your home office. The solution must minimize administrative effort. What should you do first for Storage1? A. Add a private endpoint. B. Modify the public network access settings. C. Select Internet routing. D. Modify the access control, 1 AM, settings. 10. You plan to deploy several Azure virtual machines that will run Windows Server 2022 in a virtual machine scale set by using an Azure Resource Manager template. You need to ensure that Nginx is available on all the virtual machines after they are deployed. What should you use? A. A Microsoft Intune device configuration profile. B. Microsoft Entra application proxy. C. Azure custom script extension. D. Department Center in Azure App Service. Check the correct answers for each question. Subscribe Passert for more IT exam prep.